distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the URA and Design Singapore Council team, we would like to say a great welcome to URA Centre. And today is the first forum for the President's Design Award Forum. And through the forum, we thought it would be a great opportunity for us to come together and hear the insights to be shared by the designers. Now, today, the theme of the forum is people at the heart of design. Now, you will find that across the different scales of the projects awarded, all these various projects have demonstrated that the designer's emphasis on designing for the people and community. For example, the design team at State Courts have demonstrated, right, not just being a landmark in the city, the State Court, though most of us wish that we will not need to make a trip there, right? But the State Court did offer the opportunity to offer the sense of relief, for the occupants and, of course, the office workers using the project. Likewise, for Capital Spring, even though it's a commercial mixed-use development in the city, many of us, including my two children, they are delighted, to find such generous sky gardens, built in the city. I'm sure, Brian's visiting young children from Copenhagen will also find, fascinating trying out the different hawker food in Capital Spring. I'm also very inspired by, Kershin's head care project that seeks to empower this mindset in people that all of us can make little changes, to improve the community and the life of many. Last but not least, I am very excited and looking forward to hear from Kenny, to share his thoughts and not only he's a role model to many of us, but he is also, having a great collection and body of works of both local and international projects. Right. So therefore, and last but not least, I'd like to thank Kai, for agreeing to moderate the session after the individual sharing. So I hope all of you will feel as inspired as me as we hear from the designers. I know you are here to hear from the designers, so I will hand the mic back to Lynn to introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Okay. Today we will discuss the topic, people at the heart of design. We will hear from the designers on how they have put people and communities at the heart of the design process to build a better quality of life and to create a more sustainable and inclusive society. The first speaker is Mr. Brian Young, partner from Biak Ingalls Group, who will speak on the Design of the Year Capital Spring. Brian joined BIG in 2007 and was named partner in 2015. With a background in energy efficiency research as well as economics, Brian brings an additional focus on environmental and economic sustainability into his projects. He has been the project leader on several competition-winning proposals, including the Copenhagen Waste-to-Energy plant in Copenhagen that doubles as a ski slope and the Lego house. Most recently, he has been the partner in charge for the competition-winning scheme for the Vltava Philharmonic Hall in Prague. Brian, please.
Thank you for the very generous introduction. And I feel very privileged to be here today. I can see, so this project was delivered, of course, not just by BIG, but with our local partners. I can see Nina Liu, who's sitting in the audience today with her team from RSP. And she's always been very generous and eloquent in acknowledging the fact that it takes a ton of people to do a project like this. So we also just want to acknowledge their role in the project, as well as our many other collaborators and our clients at Capital Land as well. And I think one thing you definitely realize on a project like this when you show up at the building site and there are 900 people daily working on it, is how it, in a way, it really puts you in your place, and you understand that it's not just your project, but it's really everyone else who is putting the time and effort and energy into it that has a piece of it as well. And really this idea of architecture and its potential as something that connects people to something larger than themselves, to communities around themselves, has been at the heart of this project. And from the outset, we were really trying to understand both the role it could play as a piece of tropical urbanism, a piece of the kind of infrastructure as in Singapore, but also given its importance as a site in the historic center of the central business district, and how it could really contribute to the different communities around. It's part of a really, if you look at it, a network of different green parks and areas. We were trying to imagine how it could be something that could begin to connect these green areas together, that could become a kind of true extension of the public realm, not only in the CBD, but again to start connecting to some of the areas further afield. So there was a starting point. There was a really kind of rigorous analysis of its situation in plan, how it could be connected seamlessly to sheltered and shaded walkways. Weather protection in Singapore, of course, very important. How it could extend porosity in the city center, be connected to future initiatives such as the larger cycling network, and really what we realized in the beginning, because it occupies the site of the former Golden Mile, not Golden Mile, Golden Shoe. Golden Mile, very important building, one of my favorite buildings in Singapore. But Golden Shoe, it's a huge faux pas. Golden Shoe Car Park, which was built in '84, and at the time to really provide parking capacity for the city center, but had also become a bit of a wall, you could say, in the city, in the CBD over time, as we understood, had also become a place that was really occupied more from the hours of 9 to 5. So there was really a lot of thought about how the project could be something that increases porosity on the site, begins to rejuvenate the site in the surrounding area. One of the first things we realized is that the site itself, because it is amalgamated over a series of historic sites, has kind of a bit of a strange shape in plan and required a substantial amount of cleaning up. We looked at, this is just a small subset of some of the schemes that we had looked at over time from a kind of massing perspective. But really the starting point was a kind of exercise in understanding how we could clean up the site, how we could extend porosity in the site, and what that would mean for the tower. And it turns out that the solution for us was relatively simple, which was to take a kind of, imagine a tower core, to offset a floor plate to a kind of efficient and optimum depth, and then to simply rotate it to maximize how it fits in the site with a relatively simple geometry. So it takes a kind of diamond shape, which also happens to mean that because it's rotated off axis, provides generous views for everybody who would occupy the offices in the upper portion of the tower. So the upper portion of the tower is offices, the lower portion is occupied by service residences. And what this meant also is that it would allow us to then occupy the perimeter with rooms to create a kind of internal atrium space around the core. And then but basically also to give everybody very, very generous views outwards from the site. So we had a kind of sense of what this would mean in terms of the planning for the tower. And then we began to imagine what this could mean in section. And we thought, what if we imagined the offices as, in a way, a kind of generic block that is elevated as high as possible to maximize the commercial value of the offices? What if the service residences are also imagined as a kind of generic block that sit connected on top of the podium, so they could have access to recreational and other amenities? And that would give us some room to begin to play with the tower in terms of the specificity of how it touches the ground, of how the service residences touch the offices, and how it touches the sky. What if, in a way, because it had this diamond shape in plan, we began to play with the geometric versus the organic? And then we began to fantasize and to dream a little bit about what it could mean as a kind of example of tropical urbanism to bring the kind of lush greenery into the tower at various levels. Of course, this would also have to work with the facades, which would be glazed at some points, maybe much more open in other points. And then we thought, since it sits in the historic central business district, some great examples of modernist architecture, what if we simply took a classic modernist pinstripe facade, brought it from top to bottom to unify the tower in a very, very simple gesture, and then to begin to pull it open to reveal the green and the social spaces that sit within the tower itself as a kind of invitation to the surrounding community to look inside the tower and to be invited up to enjoy the different experiences, the different, in a way, kind of like public realm and parklands that exist in a kind of three-dimensional way. I'm sure you've seen the this project, but I thought it could be interesting to also share a little bit more about the kind of internal green spaces. We really had this idea of a kind of 30-meter high tropical jungle or garden space within this kind of midsection that also was an exploration of the different layers of the rainforest that in a way could also be programmed in a kind of continuous loop of circulation from on top of the service residences with amenities such as cafes and other hangout spaces related to that, to more formal workspaces that sit connected to the bottom of the office towers, and all of this interspersed with the kind of tropical exuberance of the greenery. Now, what happened was we brought this idea to the URA. This project went through a DAP process, and the first thing they said was, we are deeply concerned about the survivability of the green in the heart of this tower, because at some places it sits underneath a 17-meter overhang in a deeply shaded area. And Singapore, well, there's certainly a reputation for greenery growing relatively easily in the urban context. There was a lot of discussion about the fact that we didn't just want greenery to survive, but to actually thrive. So it actually meant that we developed an entirely new process that was based around understanding the access of light to the spectrum of light they use for photosynthesis, called photosynthetically active radiation. It's offset a little bit from the visible light spectrum that we're all familiar with. So there was a kind of very iterative design process that we had to come up with to understand the meaning of the planting plan, the plant selection, and how it would develop over time. So this is a kind of analysis overlaid on top of the bottom level of the midsection of the tower called the Green Oasis, where this analysis allowed us to identify different planting types that could be placed in different areas, from trees to shrubs and different types of creepers, where the idea then, if you look at some of these images, we started with a continuous spiral of circulation, but the final form is arrived at because they are almost carved out by access to daylight. So when you're there, you can almost see and understand how the voids are created, not as a kind of aesthetic response to creating an interesting parkscape, but actually as a response to the need for plants to have access to daylight in order to survive. And it creates this kind of incredible Pyrenean space where you have views both looking up and looking down as well, and a very kind of dynamic experience as you circulate around the midsection of the tower. And I'm pretty happy to report that at least the times that I've been there, it just gets more and more green, even in the kind of deeper spaces at the bottom. So it certainly feels like it was a kind of productive process for us. And to go back to what I was saying in the beginning, the way we've seen this project and the role that it should play in the city is really as a kind of extension of the public realm, as a kind of series of three-dimensional parkscapes that extend from the ground floor all the way into the sky. And I thought we could just end by going through a few images so you could kind of see how that is deployed in the project from the 51st floor, where there's again a kind of continuous spiral of gardens that circulate all the way around the top, that also integrates F&B establishments. An urban farm is integrated into a part of the rooftop that generates about 80 kilograms of produce a month, which is then used in the 3 F&B establishments in the tower, which for us has been a pretty incredible metric to understand just the potential of what you can do with relatively scarce resources in terms of how it can be a part of a kind of productive life of the tower, the ecology of the tower, the kind of economics of the tower. And it's been so successful that, as I understand, the restaurants have now asked to take over the entirety of the rooftop to turn it into an urban farm that creates produce for the various restaurants. There's an incredible 360-degree views at the top that is completely free for access. One thing that was very, very important for us was to also return the original Market Street Hawker Center back into this development. It really has a strong history in this location as really the only kind of cheap and accessible food that had been around for a long time. So it was very important for us that this was returned and connected directly to the ground plane when the project opened again. And you can see how the facade begins to open up at the various levels and integrates access for different types of amenities and uses. And very importantly for us also at the ground plane, where we have also pedestrianized a portion of the neighboring Market Street as a part of the redevelopment of the area, so that it really becomes something that becomes porous, open, and contributes to an active city and streetscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for the wonderful sharing. Next, we have Design of the Year, Heck Care, tips and tricks for a dementia-friendly home. Representing Heck Care are architect Hong Ke-shing, director of Lacquer Architects, and Mr. Han Wai, co-founder and creative director from Lanzavakia and Wai. Lacquer Architects is a multidisciplinary practice that explores the social-emotional potentials of design. The studio searches for designs that help people to learn and grow and form more inclusive kinds of collective relationships. Alongside her role as director of Lacquer Architects, Ke-shing is an associate professor and Bachelor of Architecture program director at the National University of Singapore's Department of Architecture. Lanzavakia and Wai, established in 2010, is an internationally renowned award-winning design studio based in Italy and Singapore. The studio's work includes research projects for Herman Miller, limited edition objects, mass products for brands such as Living Divani and Capellini, as well as special commissions for major brands and museums. Representing Lanzavakia and Wai is the director and co-founder, Han Wai. Ke-shing, please.
Thanks so much for having us come today to tell you a bit about Heck Care. Dementia, according to Alzheimer's Disease International, affects 55 million people worldwide currently. And it's a number that will double every 20 years. And I've strived my entire adult life to try and keep work and family separated. Not very successfully, I must admit, given that my husband is my business partner. So it's a bit funny to me that this project, in which my personal and professional lives came crashing together, ended up being one of my favorite. This interest in dementia was not just academic for me, but deeply personal. My father suffered from frontotemporal dementia for almost 2 decades, which not only gave us some intimate insights, but provided a kind of fire and a purpose. A quick disclaimer, Heck Care is not endorsed by IKEA because of liability reasons. So here you see myself and Josh, Han, and our client Powa of the Lian Foundation. Now, Han of Lanzavakia and Wai, who'll be speaking after me, is one of our closest friends, an amazing designer whose work we admired, and we always wanted to work together. And with Powa, we had already done a few projects. He's an amazing instigator, always throwing down challenges, and we started talking about this project in 2016. He knew we had an interest in aging, he knew about my father's illness, and he said, why don't you make a different class, but for dementia? So a different class, 10 preschools redefined, was a proposal for 10 design concepts for preschools, and it was given out to policymakers, school operators, stat boards, architects, etc., to inspire new designs and to change the way we think in Singapore about what preschool design could be. And it really did inspire a lot of architects and preschool design in Singapore. It was also available to download for free. And we managed to do it so quickly, we were churning out 1 school design a week. So we knew as a team we wanted to work on Dementia Project together to interrogate the interface between the environment of the home and dementia. And we also knew we wanted to make it a book because books can travel easily and deliver ideas far and wide. So the project was supposed to be provocative, done very fast, perhaps taking a year at most. Easy. After all, we delivered a different class in less than 6 months. It ended up taking us until the end of 2020. So Heck Care was born out of a frustration that we had as designers with the state of current dementia design guidelines. Now, design for dementia guidelines all tended to be very high level. Perhaps the most famous of these is the evidence-based Dementia Enabling Environment Principles by Professor Richard Fleming and Kirsty Bennett. And they're all really important guides, but a bit hard to know how to apply. And we wanted ours to really be within reach. So it's a 240-page book in the guise of an IKEA manual to help people adapt their homes for their loved ones with dementia. And with dementia affecting so many people, most will at least spend the initial stages of the disease at home. Besides, sudden and abrupt changes in routine and environment can really speed up decline, so it's really best to dementia in place, so to speak. Why IKEA? Well, from our own experience at home, we were already using a lot of IKEA products because they're so accessible. With my father's type of dementia, you start to lose the meaning of signs. So there was a while that my father only recognized water, meaning water that he could drink, by the type of glass it was served in. Luckily, the type of glass that he attached the idea of water to was this kind of Duralex tumbler that IKEA has very similar glasses to. You can see the poker on the right. So we got a dozen of these and put them everywhere he would go, in our homes, at my aunt's home, because otherwise he would refuse to drink. And dehydration is a very common and dangerous issue. Or when we needed to use mattress protectors, we found that the shower curtains at IKEA were cheaper, more waterproof, and more durable than commercially available mattress protectors. So turning to IKEA made sense. All of this is downloadable for free at hackcare.org, and close to 3,000 hard copies have been given out to healthcare providers, caregivers, and people with early diagnoses. There's also a mobile version. Sorry, I missed something. There's also a mobile version where all of the content, okay, this clicker is a bit delayed, is conveniently accessible. Now, the book contains hack ideas and essays and provocations that give people insight into dementia and how the environment can play an enormous role in caregiving. The tips and tricks are also contextualized within some understanding of cognitive decline and how one's relationship to the environment changes along with the progression of the disease, demonstrating through practice the principle of person-centric care. Now, the goal was to help people to think creatively and flexibly, to make tweaks to improve the way they care. At home, we had observed how my father, in his decline into dementia, was incredibly responsive to changes in his environment. And more importantly, that the manipulation of the environment was really in the hands of us, his family, and not in the hands of architects and designers. We realized that many caregivers were constantly hacking, sometimes using their own ideas, and sometimes through the sharings in WhatsApp groups. And the adjustment is constant. What helps is to develop a mentality of constant tweaking to routines and the environment as needed, adapting to the progression of the disease. We sought collective wisdom. We spoke with professional caregivers, psychologists, geriatricians, and community dementia care experts. We listened to a lot of personal stories, visited homes, looked at the kinds of challenges dementia poses, then came up with tips and suggestions that covered daily activities. Now, the work really started by thinking about furniture hacks, and Han will talk later about the process of creating these prototypes, but I want to give a little bit of background to this. We visited IKEA with carers from the Brown Center, talked about which furniture would be useful, like the classic prong chair, how it is in so many homes, comfortable and affordable, but for older people with declining muscle strength, rather difficult to get out of. It also made sense to us as a first hack, as many people suffering with dementia spend an increasing amount of time sitting, so the chair became a significant focus in the home. The chair had to become the center of life, such as drinking water, napping, being cared for, spending the day. So we looked at how to adjust the chair to enable all those things. How can someone nap here without their head bobbing around? Can higher handrests help them stand up? So our hacks gave us this prototype, and we have a shopping list and an instruction manual for it. But as you can see, perusing all the other hacks, what we're trying to do is not create one definitive solution. Hacking as a method isn't about a final design product, so much as an ongoing process of optimizing and adjusting. We feel that this is much more appropriate to a disease and a condition of care in which the challenges are constantly shifting. And each person's dementia journey is unique. You may have heard the saying, you meet one person with dementia and you've met one person with dementia. The progression and presentation of dementias, all varied, are linked to the patient's pre-morbid personalities. Now, I won't talk about the other hacks as Han will. We then moved to the scale of the room, embedding micro worlds into the rest of the home. We experimented with furniture setups to see how they could be accommodated into some typical living room sizes, how the arrangements of furniture within rooms can evolve and adapt to the needs of the person with dementia, and always keeping them embedded in family life. We tried to address other more intangible concerns like time. How do we cue our loved one that it is dinner time? We looked at the role of smells, lighting, and sound. And then coming back to the shower curtain as a mattress protector starting point, we looked at products that might be used in different ways. So from a previous design research project on aging-friendly neighborhoods, we learned that many Singaporean elders are uncomfortable using mobility aids, even if they need them. They don't like how it calls attention, they find it embarrassing, so they prefer to struggle unaided, lean on umbrellas, or push shopping carts instead. So in Hack, we looked at ways in which IKEA products might be misused, like in this elevation where handlebars are disguised as a series of everyday decorative objects. You see the line in red there. Yet provide guidance from A to B. Or the fidget board, for example, made from an IKEA chopping board fitted with simple hardware fixtures, or our tote bag, or even a pillowcase fitted with zippers or eyelets and laces. Now, the book is deliberately an optimistic approach to a very serious and depressing reality. Having a loved one suffer with dementia is an immensely difficult experience to go through. Caring for them yourself makes it even harder. Getting the tone right was really important. We wanted this book to spread a manifesto, to empower persons with dementia and their caregivers. It's a reminder that we're not alone and that there are some simple things that can help alleviate some of the everyday difficulties. And these ideas should be free, shared, they should be empowering, and they should expand the discourse. And now I'll pass the mic to Han.
So, my name's Han Wai, and the great thing about this is that how I got to know them as friends was because I was a moderator of a PDA session 2016. I want to say, hey, like, you guys are doing cool stuff. Oh, you're doing cool stuff too. Let's talk about a project, right? And then the project came into existence next year in 17, right? So how we got into this project was because we did this collection of rethought elderly furniture called No Country for Old Men, which is quite a violent movie if you know it, but quite a nice title if you use it this way. So it came from a provocation where, you know, when we grow old, we don't have choice over the things that we own, which is strange, you know, because now I can choose from so many jeans, but when I grow old, there's only 5 wheelchairs, 7 walking sticks, right? And those define our relationship with the environment, with how we interact with the new reality, right? So we decided to delve into that. As you know, the chair is symbolic of daily rituals, right? Everyone has a favorite chair. The chair is one of the most powerful things you can show in media to help people understand a concept, right? So this chair obviously has been in production since the 1970s. So we needed to find IKEA products that do not go out of production. If not, the hack would be rendered futile. And as you can see, you know, it's really a place where it's a it kind of grounds this micro-architectural site in your home. And if you're dementia, the world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That's the nature of this disease, right? So it was super fun because we all know this chair, and as an industrial designer, right, we also know how these things are made. And to hack a classic was such an honor as well. And we had to figure out like ergonomics, you know, what is upright, because a lot of things are designed for that, but not for that. So there was a lot of testing that we had to do in the studio, right? And you can see the headrest, right, 02 up there. It's actually the bamboo chopping board that you can buy from the kitchen section, right? So it was kind of like jazz, you know, like a punk approach to it. To how we were designing things, and I think that's how we saw design. You know, it's not defined by domain, but more of concept. Concept decides what comes in, right? Yeah. So we had this term called living chair. You know, so the life is all around. It's satellites around the chair, and that's something that you would have to reprogram your domestic spaces for. Yeah, so it's kind of in plain sight, you know. It's using the vernacular of IKEA, you know, which everybody knows and love. You know, it doesn't ostracize you. It doesn't say you're weak. It's not aluminum. You know, it's not plastic. You know, it doesn't treat you like a piece of meat. You know, you're still human, right? At the end of the day, you're dealing with a loved one. So as you can see, the armrests are actually from a famous stool, right? You kind of hack together. But I think just to echo what Xing was saying is that it's not prescriptive, right? It's more of adopting a mindset that you can do it too, which is not prevalent in the top line high principle dementia advice of today, right? So it's more about redefining what design is used for, or rather using the design method to change mindsets and therefore empower, right? Because that's the thing that you don't really have when you're faced in this situation. Right, so you can see the back support, pedal armrest, things that you could sew by yourself. So it doesn't have to be exclusively IKEA. It's just the system. It could be a good morning towel. It could be anything that has emotional value to the user, as what Xing said about the Duralex and the IKEA equivalent. Yeah, there you go. $9.90. If you can do it now as well. If you have a Pong and you find yourself falling asleep. Yeah. And next we talk about the Algot. So this is a shelving system, right? You can create a little micro-architecture around it. There's the blinds attached to it. There's a pegboard, right? So there's a certain facing to it, and depending on your floor plan, you can face it in the way that you want, right? And that's a beautiful thing. So please go and have a look at the publication. And you can see the memories close at hand. Before, after, and we also take care of the carer's corner, because carer fatigue is a real thing, right? If you care for an elderly, that's a real thing. So at the back, you can still do your emails, you can still do your Zoom, while still be in sight of your dad, your mom, right? And this is all SCADIS, right? Everybody knows SCADIS, right? And one of the great things about IKEA, right, is that it's worldwide, right? So it's not Singapore. And that was something that we thought of since the beginning, right? How do we take up what is global, what is familiar, where is a place that I would go to even don't like, who flips through a furniture catalog other than IKEA's? Who goes to IKEA not for furniture? It's mind-boggling, right? So as a concept, as a ecosystem, IKEA has all of these things, and it's global, right? Like when I was studying in Eindhoven, I went to IKEA to eat breakfast because it reminded me of Singapore. Right, yeah, for real. Like, yeah, I want the meatballs and the lingonberry sauce. Singapore. No, still Eindhoven. Right. So IKEA is something that has all that cultural memory that all of us love. Right. So we have been approached by British institutions, dementia institutions in the UK and also in America, and this is going to a nice museum in 25, which we'll share more next time. The blinds, so your blinds attached to it as well, so you can control light, because that's when dementia sufferers have a real panic, is when the light changes, whether it's dawn or dusk, right? So you can have this little thing attached to it, and it's all super affordable. Yeah. I'll just leave with this quote. I always believe like a rich man is someone who can see beauty in everything, right? It doesn't matter the price, right? A powerful designer is someone who can see possibilities in everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Kershing and Han Wai. Next, representing Design of the Year, State Courts Towers, we have architect Colin Wu, Senior Vice President, Architecture from CPG Consultants Private Limited. Colin has overseen and led many of its landmark and award-winning projects in Singapore over the last 30 years, namely the Gardens by the Bay, the National Museum of Singapore, Mandai Crematorium, Jurong Lake Gardens, and the upcoming Johor Bahru Singapore Rapid Transit System. His ability to envision and lead mega and highly complex projects from design inception to completion has helped CPG to garner many awards for its projects, including being recognized thrice by the President's Design Award. Let's welcome Colin to share more on State Court Towers. Colin, please.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon to share with you the thoughts and the ideas behind the making of state courts. I thought perhaps when I was preparing this presentation, I would give it a title, and the title would be Breaking New Ground in Courthouse Design. Just like Brian, Capital Spring, the making of state courts is indeed a collaborative effort by many who have contributed as a team. Special mention to Siri and Multiply, our partners and collaborators, and working hand in hand with us in perfecting the design of the state courts. Unfortunately, Chris is not able to be here today at the forum, but he sends his apologies. So I thought I'd give a little bit of a background, what really is indeed the aspirations and indeed what represents a state court towers. Not many of us will know what really constitutes inside a court building. So in the very gist, it is in fact an administration of justice and is in fact an adherence to the rule of law, the building functions. But the architecture in it conveys a very important character that needs to be conveyed in the final form that we have done. And there are aspects of transparency, fairness, dignity, and decorum. But in the brief also, it mentions about the need for this architecture to be innovative, exciting, and contribute positively to the quality of Singapore's built environment. Also, not like the Supreme Court, the state courts is indeed a building that has a higher degree of interaction with the community. And so it's a building that should not result in a fortress-like building, but rather one that should be open. But it also at the same time should evoke a sense of respect for the authority of the court. So a little bit about the background on some of our court buildings in Singapore, the Supreme Court from past to present. But as you can see, mainly of it is generally a low-rise building typology. So it starts with the vision. Sorry. We have been actually searching for the site, good site for the building, and we have started since the 90s, the late 90s. But eventually, the most important aspect that determined the final location was the vision of a judiciary hub here at Havelock Square, where the state courts eventually would be together integrated with the new family justice courts, which is actually currently undergoing a major A&A, forming a one-stop integrated judiciary hub. And by this, we know that operations can be optimized, they can be shared amenities, infrastructure, and resources. So with this particular site, we have overtaken actually is an open surface car park. And we knew from the beginning that it was going to be a very, very tight site. And this, with a brief, eventually led to a massing that's going to be the first high-rise courthouse in Singapore. Not only is the first, it's also going to be, in fact today, it is the tallest government building here in Singapore. But not only that, it has achieved to be one of the 3 tallest courthouses in the world at 178 meters tall. It also accommodates about 53 courtrooms and 54 hearing chambers. So a bit about the design approach. 3 very important aspects that we wanted to maintain. 1 is organizational clarity. 2, transparency. 3, the making of collective spaces. So in the first, what we have done here in the design, as opposed to a singular building form, the design took its shape by creating 2 separate towers. Distinctively clear in terms of its organization, with the front tower occupying the courts, while the back occupying mainly the support offices. So by this, we have the front, which is called the court tower, and the back, the office tower. And these 2 towers are linked together via sky bridges. As you can see from our studies, the rear tower, which is rather slender, is the office tower, and we have the slightly larger court tower in the front that's actually facing the current, the former State Courts building, or we call it the octagon. Again, here we studied the scale and the difference in height as compared to the former State Courts and the new that's going to come in the form of the tower. Again, a study model, as you can see from the photo of the model, the rather slender tower at the back. The second design approach is one of transparency. Here we see the open facade as a metaphor for the judicial system here, one that is fair, one that is transparent. By this, what the design has done is that it's taken away the facade that's very typical of a typical high-rise tower here and removed it, revealing the contents within. And by peeling away the facade, what has unveiled is that we start to see the clarity of the floor plates, which we now call it the terraces. And on these terraces are where the courtrooms, as you can see, those in the square cubes or boxes, are placed on. Again, this is a study model that we have done. As you can see, behind the open frame structure are actually the courtrooms, which is the core function of the court tower. The third approach that we wanted to do was to create a collective space, an open space that created a place, a gathering space for court users. This is as opposed to what's more conventional, where we see the long corridor, picture on the left, feeding off to different courtrooms. This only creates further anxiety and also disorientation to court users when they come for a court hearing. So instead, we wanted to create an open platform, an open space that people could gather and move around freely without having that anxious feeling of walking through a long corridor to the courtroom. So in terms of form massing, as we mentioned earlier, 2 versus 1, the 2 towers enable it to not only have independent function in terms of its organization, but also the towers were read separately instead of a singular large tower. And this helped reduce the visual impact of the design. Also, the 2 towers were designed to appear as if they are slightly gently moving past one the other, never fully aligned. As we look at the tower itself, I think the important criteria, as we highlighted in the beginning, was that the court complex had to present itself with a certain dignity and restraint. And this is actually carried through with the open frame structure through the colonnade facade, as you can see here. The building also took a very important octagonal form as compared to curved forms, and this emphasized a classical order and elegance, a bit a modern articulation. So by this, you can see a sense of formality, sense of order that befits a court building. Behind is also important. It is the tower, the office tower at the rear. So here, the office tower faces Singapore's CBD, but here it's expressed as a very thin and elegant slab tower. But furthermore, what we have done is we have brought the grid, the open frame structure, also to the rear of the building. But here it features in an expanding and contracting grid. Vertically, if you can see, the grid contracts where the service courts are located at the both ends, and it expands where light and views are required in the middle, which are the offices itself. The modulation of the horizontal grids also bring the eye across the facade and also towards the sky, providing a clean and absolute form with a sense of a playful rhythm. More importantly, the tower itself had to respect its 2 neighbors. And by the 2 neighbors, one is a national monument, which is the current Family Justice Courts. 2 is the former State Courts building, which we call it the Octagon. It's a conserved building. So these 2 buildings stood very near, in proximity to the new tower. And at the end of the day, the tower had to respect well of these buildings, especially the Octagon, which has a very, very strong geometric form. Furthermore, what is important is that if you can see the Octagon building at the side, with its strong geometric forms, those forms are actually the courtrooms itself. So in a sense, the old Octagon expressed the courtrooms, which is its core function externally. And the new tower in itself had also incorporated in the same approach, where now one can see with the unveiling of the facade, the actual core function of the tower, which are the courtrooms itself. So this is a very sensitive approach that carried forth the same approach from the octagon to the new tower. Also, in designing the building, especially a court building, requires a very thorough, very deep understanding of the complexities and programming and circulation, primarily three major groups, which is the judges, the persons in custody, and the public. So the two slender towers, while linked by the bridges, created this very dramatic void space that brought in natural light in the middle. But more importantly, it also helped in terms of creating a controlled circulation. But more than just the floor plate, the planning of the court spaces are not just horizontal, but vertical in nature. So a thorough understanding is needed in its planning. And most importantly, as mentioned earlier, the criteria to separate these three groups are very critical in the planning of the whole tower. So again, the two towers are linked by 39 bridges. While they function as bridges and circulation, they also form a structure element that provides both towers to function singularly as one. We had to even carry a wind tunnel test to validate that the deflections of the tower, particularly the office tower, are within human comfort. Most importantly, the relationship between the city is something that we wanted to address to this public building. And what's important is that we wanted to bring the two architectures, one that is something typical and one of the new modern high-rise, together to create something that is familiar and yet surprisingly new to all. And by this, we wanted to create an identity that's distinct yet familiar. And where the courtroom boxes were eventually clad in the pigmented precast concrete panels that took the inspiration from the roof colors and textures of the terracotta roof tiles that we see in Chinatown. These are some of the work efforts behind the scene. It's a lot of ingenuity here because it's not from the textbook, and a lot of tests and a lot of experiments that we had to do to finally come out with a product that we are very, very satisfied with. So it's more than just mere finishes, because this material has been applied three-dimensionally across the courtrooms to create a volumetric box for the courtrooms. And also these panels function as physical enclosures to the courtrooms behind without the need of a secondary wall. So again, the lobbies are very important as we frame and allow natural light in. But most important, we are also framing, providing orientation to the visitors with the former State Courts building behind, as you can see. We wanted to create collective spaces, as we mentioned earlier. And this is one of the efforts that we have done, that we wanted to create places of calm and respite for court users before the beginning of their legal proceedings. And by the sky terraces, this enabled people to find this precious moment before the proceedings begin. So again, lush greenery is something that we wanted to bring into even a judiciary building, and where the sky gardens on 12 of its terraces are fully landscaped. Not forgetting, even the rooftop of the podium is one that we can create an opportunity, as I call it, the great divide between the two towers. Lastly, and a few more slides, I think this is an important link, the entrance canopy that links the two towers from the old court building and the new tower. But more importantly, it's also a framing of the past, which you can see the monument behind, which is the Family Justice Court. Again, stepping into the foyer, it is something that brings a sense of decorum for any visitor entering this court building, knowing that one has entered into a different space. So I'll just quickly run through. I think the time is already done. This is part of some of the court plannings, which I think many of us will never get a chance to see. So I thought I'd give you the privilege to see what a courtroom really looks like. Okay? So do have a look at it. This is indeed interior. Nice to see it through a photo, but not being there, all right? Okay. So again, it's a modern courtroom with a lot of IT features that we have. Mansions Court, this is the largest one. It's a double volume space. And lastly, in the night, I think this is important for public building that also would have its lighting as a public building to be seen, not just appreciated in the day, but also in the night. Okay, thank you.
I'm so happy to be back here, to know that this room actually is back in business after the COVID, because many thoughts, many designs, many discourse has been shared here. I think this is what we as architects valued, sharing our thoughts with each other. And every design, I and the team will start with sketches like this. And my tool is actually quite simple. A normal pencil and a two-headed blue and red pencil. I don't do computer drawings, so when my colleague produced the drawing, I would use my pencil to kind of like comment on the drawings. Now, what I'm showing here is the initial sketches for a Singapore Pavilion for Shanghai, 2010. The concept was a musical box. We wanted to share with people the talent we have, the cultural talent, the subculture talent like Stephanie Sun or J.J. Lin or some designers. And so the initial concept was a rounded building. Why? Because I thought the message is we are not as square as you think. Okay, and this box actually is naturally challenged to show you my folio over 30, 40 years, but we've selected a few. And how important, they are compact, very compacted form of architectural discipline, if you like. And they allowed you to understand the local climatic condition, the needs of the client, as well as testing out architectural form, and later on you can use it or use them for other projects. So over the years, we have been designing, we have the opportunity to design quite a few houses. And as you can see, because the clients, the needs are different, the characters are different, so the outcome of these houses are also different. At this point, I must say that there is one book that influenced me a lot. That is the book by Mr. Lee Kip Lin, The Singapore House. And I met Kip Lin in England in the 90s. And we share our kind of like thoughts about tropical houses. And of course, I understand what he was trying to tell us about the traditional black and white houses, how wonderful they are. But my role, I thought then, is after understanding this, perhaps I will give them a new life. I will use the modern kind of like aesthetic to continue that tropical houses idea. So you can see in here, there are some, they are double roof. The lightweight secondary roof actually allowed the ventilation of air, just like what we have of the big pitch roof and the ceiling with a space to allow ventilation. Now I home into one house that we design and I'm very fond of. This house belongs to Dr. Huang, and it is a house that it shows the close bonding between her and particularly the younger son. Because you see, the son has been away for many years, and he couldn't quite decide whether he wanted to come home or not. Being an investor, banker, he is very successful. And the mother probably hoping to build this house, even an outhouse or accommodation for him to his brief, perhaps he would come back more often. So you see on the right, the house for the son is more open, and for the mother, which is the house, the main house is in a U-shaped form, is more enclosed. But within the two houses, there is one gesture they share. The mother house has got a horizontal L-shaped form that is the marble wall, which I explained to you why. And then the sun will have this lattice, also an L shape, but vertically jump over the roof and allow natural ventilation again, because he liked to invite friends over for parties and all that. This picture was intentional because I always remember there's one painting in Urbino called The Ideal City. And that painting has got a building with a door slightly ajar. And this house, the main house, has the same quality because you then can look into the house, the inner side of the mother that has got a courtyard with bonsai, with trees, and is very warm and soft inside. And then at the side, the two buildings, they share similar aesthetic, okay? And they are both looking onto the swimming pool, which the mother and the son share. Then we realized along the way when we were designing, the mother, of course, is a keen collector of arts as well as wine and what have you. But there is this particular sculpture or artifacts she kept away in a storeroom. Then we realized it was something that she and the husband, passed away by the time we designed the house, collected when they went around China giving lectures. They are both very successful doctors. And of course, we decided to display them in a more intimate environment on second floor, and is the family room, okay? And I don't want to overplay it. So we allowed natural light, sort of like gradually lit up the collection. Well, the natural light actually occur because of the L-shaped wall being pulled out from the main wall of the RC structure. And so this is a Pierce Hill house. Talking about architecture for the people, I think it is rewarding when clients like this share with you their very personal sort of like details. And then we as architects, we responded to it. Next, factory buildings usually are not being emphasized or looked up to. However, we have the opportunity to design a very unique brand of Singapore, that is Bread Talk group. And when we started the Bread Talk HQ, the chairman, George Craig, as well as JTC, wanted something quite different from what we know, the conventional type of industrial building. And the building is at a junction, very busy junction of Tai Seng. And I can see one of my colleagues who is sitting at the back, who look after this building. And he will share with you the experience we had. Now, on the right is Select Building, which we designed after Bread Talk, but slightly differently because Select is famous for food court, lunch takeaways, and Chinese dim sum. So we devised this dim sum basket-like ceramic tiles, if you like, to cover up the exhaust windows and all that. And that ceramic part was being done in Taiwan by a ceramic artist. Back to Bread Talk, as well as some other buildings, because of Bread Talk, because of the 3-in-1, meaning the HQ, the central kitchen, and the retail part all comes together. Traditional industrial area become lively. Not only the neighbor uses the building to lunch or dinner, we noticed that Singaporean would drive all the way there with the family over the weekend. So it actually works. Now, currently we are designing a similar type of building in Shenzhen. And then the one below is in Chuzhou, which is near Nanjing. And the owner also collected sculpture. So it formed part of the building, the HQ building, and bring life to the business park there. Okay, the building. This building was inspired by the layer of cakes and bread that Bread Talk actually produced. But the shifting of these floors has an intentional purpose. It provides shading for the floor below, and the different volumes actually comes from the needs within, like certain central kitchen, they need higher volumes or storage area. So with that, we are able to compose the form, if you like, with outside terraces to provide shading, as well as some greenery. And surprisingly, it also introduced air pockets for better ventilations. These are images of Bread Talk lower floors. The concept is actually quite simple. It's not unlike when you go to a showroom of BMW or Audi to test out your cars. So you come here, you sample the Laksa that they would serve, or you look at the model of how they operate. For the foreigners, the investor, they would say, "Oh, I like that. I will take that, and I'll bring back to India or Dubai or England." So it works for Bread Talk. On the upper floor, the top two floors, these spaces are mainly used for administration, logistic, as well as meetings of the staff and training. However, we do not want the sort of like conventional partitioning of the spaces. So instead, we use various sizes of glass boxes as internal courtyard, not unlike what you see in traditional houses. And so the people can work next to a greenhouse, if you like, an outdoor greenhouse, and they can also get the natural light, as well as when it's raining, they can feel the mood of the weather. And this, in a way, is a partition, is a segregation between the two departments or between departments. The next subject I'd like to talk about is conservation work that our office has been doing. Although we've done quite a number of conservation projects, but each of them are rather different due to the site condition as well as the historical background. And so the first one is the Sultan Hotel. Now, Sultan Hotel set in Kampong Glam, which is a really, important cultural district of Singapore. Not only that, this is very rare that 2 rows of houses became available. They're almost like, there are actually about 10 of them, with one of them being the a press building that was established in the 90s, about 100 years ago. And so we took over the task to combine them converted them into a 64-room hotel. And more importantly, there are common spaces like the back alley as well as the narrow corridors that the local people are still using. And we landscape them and revitalize them and give back to the community the spaces they wanted. And you can see it was quite run down. And you can also see the feature of this main building has got Malay feature, traditional Western classical feature, as well as some Chinese feature. So it's truly multicultural. Selecting of suitable material colors to match, as well as landscape the back alley, otherwise is a no man's land. Next, BTRS. BTRS, as you know, stopped functioning since the train is no longer running between us and Malaysia. And so we took on the task not only to restore the old building of the station, but we also introduced soft landscaping, hard landscaping, to allow the jogger or the cyclist to enjoy this stretch of the green corridor. And the lines you see on the landscaping was the idea taken from a photo taken by a local photographer, Darren So. He captured the moment the train last left the station, but the photo was in these strips of light because of the movement, the speed that the train went through. And so it became the flooring materials that we later on introduced in the project. again, just like just now, one of you mentioned, we have to talk to the local people, the community, and the user to collect their view about what they actually want for this space, as well as the two old buildings before we start. Amenity like a washroom and all that was also part of the brief. The third conservation project took us about 6 years to complete. Of course, with COVID in between, it actually prolonged it. But it was useful because it needed that sort of time for us to actually hone our skill and make sure it's done properly. The gallop is unusual because it's the 6 hectare of land is a combination of 2 different plots of land. As you can see on the right-hand side, the more sort of like tropical forest, the more wild area was the land, which one belongs to the Sultan of Johor. And then the land that was sort of like nicely manicured with the 2 houses on it belongs to the 2 houses of number 5 and number 7. We then have to include or create additional buildings such as visitor reception, a children playground, a cafe, and a restaurant, among other things. As you can see on the plan, we actually allow the passage for the visitor to be in between the 2 plots of land. So it's turning and winding towards the 2 houses, which then one of them become Gallery of Botany Science, and another one Gallery for Botany Art. And we were very careful when we placed the new building like the visitor center as well as the new restaurant building, because there are hierarchy to be observed. And this building is important because we realize that Bidwell, he referred a lot to not only English architecture, like the building by Philip Webb, the Red House, but also the English landscape movement. So we have to continue that language, not only when we are laying down the path and the walkway, but also when we create this restaurant building, we actually place the building at the slope of a hill so that it's slightly lower than house number 7, the inventory. However, we took the hint from him because there was a 45-degree cut inside the building, although it is perfectly sort of like symmetrical. But he did this gesture to introduce the service area towards the back, going towards the back. And so we took the 45-degree line externally and placed the restaurant there. Oh, I have only 3 minutes to go. I'll try. The new building did not mimic house number 7. Instead, we decided we are going to have a 360-degree glass building, and the curvature actually was inspired by local flower, like a piece of orchid. These are external view of Gallup. And you can see that not only the building, but the landscaping continued that English landscape movement. And one thing I want to sort of like highlight is that throughout the whole site, next time when you go there, please pay attention to the swale that is next to the walkway, because these collect rainwater, and then we recycle the water to irrigate the plant within the garden. Some of the internal view, and these some of the old elements like the roundel window, the safe, are some of the important elements we have to salvage, and we have to find a maker to replace them when we realize some of them are missing. And finally, the client told us perhaps there is a need for a connection between the older botanic garden and the new one. And so, finally, we added this footbridge to connect the two. Now, I want to talk about another type of buildings we do. That's bookshops. We've been very fortunate since the 90s. The appreciation of good design, the appreciation of good architecture, and more importantly for myself, through this writing, I question what actually make a good design, or what make a good city ticks. And sometimes you don't realize until you complete the writing. Then it dawned on you, oh, is that that unexpectedly emerged. So writing is very much part of my thinking process. The last few weeks or couple of weeks since knowing that I got this award, I've been asked many times, well, a bit like a film director winning the Oscar. And then they ask you, so what's next? Well, I've chosen to show you one project that we are doing. And this project is in east of Turkey, it's in Van. And this town is a historical town. It was the capital for Armenian people. And it has got a beautiful lake and is surrounded with mountains. The client was very lucky because he owned 50,000 square meter of land that is facing the lake. And he's a hotelier, so this is his hometown. He wants us to design a banquet hall that can hold wedding banquet, exhibition, or outdoor concerts, and a hotel towards the back where the hill slope is. And in between, by the way, there is a wonderful orchard that's been ongoing for, I don't know, hundreds of years, because the orchard was passed down generation to generation. So this is a hall that we are building now. You can see the lobby building, the washroom, and the night view. This is work in progress. Okay, after talking about the future, I'd like to bring you back to the past. In 1985, James Sterling has written a brief for young designer, for RABA students. Is to design a gallery for David Hockney, the British artist, and Anthony Caro. I was then already working in, I just graduated from the AA, and I started working at Arab Associates, but I participated the competition. And recently I went back to our London studio. I haven't looked at these drawings for a long time, but because I know I'm going to give this talk, so I actually open up the old folios, and these are all kind of like hand-drawn drawings before the AutoCAD. Oh well, maybe AutoCAD already started, I didn't know. But it was sort of like a rotary pen on tracing kind of drawings. Now, the concept is very simple. The concept was, as you know, taken from the painting by David Hockney. And the two bodies of the building actually rotate, kind of like they relate to each other because of different height of the floor plate. So as you are enjoying the paintings, the artwork, sometimes you are inside, sometimes you are outside, because the ramp will take you in and out. And so this is the concept for that competition. And what I want to say is that at that time, I was very enthusiastic about Renaissance architecture, particularly Schinkel, the neoclassical architect from Berlin. And the perspective perhaps is a bit faint because it was done in just, a simple rendering. Was inspired by one of the perspectives by Schinkel. He looked from the inner side of a building, which is under shadow, then look out to outer space and look onto another building. Not unlike if you go to Gallup, you stand along the corridor of the arches at Abara and look towards house number 7. You have the same chiaroscuro effect that I was talking about. I want to thank PDA for giving me this prestigious award. I'm really honored, and most of all, giving me an opportunity to look into my old folios, which are there. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. May I invite the speakers, including Dr. Joshua Komarov from Team Heck Care, to join Kenny at the seats in front. We will now move on to the Q&A session. Moderating this session... Moderating this session is architect Khairuddin Saharom. Kai graduated from the National University of Singapore with a Masters of Architecture degree and was awarded the Lee Kuan Yew Gold Medal for being the top graduate in 1999. He established Kite Studio Architecture in 2010 to provide architectural services that seek an invigorating approach to design and heighten spatial experience. In 2017, Kai was selected as one of the promising architects under the age of 45 as part of URA's 20 Under 45 initiative. Currently, he sits on the Singapore Board of Architects and serves as a board member for the Malay Heritage Foundation. Besides being a familiar face in the media and having hosted many television programs for both local and regional networks, Kai is also an illustrator for books. We will now take questions from the floor. You may also scan the QR code shown on the screen to submit your questions.
Right. Thank you very much for that generous introduction. Thank you, speakers and award winners. It has indeed been a delight for us to hear your stories and narratives, how designs are conceived, whether or not from layers of cake or kaya toast or even from frustration in the case of Kashing's works, right? And I think if there's two important common threads that I could take away from the presentations, the fact that not only that the designs are very people-centric, but the designs are able to cross into the threshold of innovation and invention. Now that's something that's really hard because you can design a window in many ways. You can design something differently in many ways, but the threshold is to design it meaningfully. And I think for that, all of your works have proven that going to the threshold, pushing the boundaries of innovation, and well-deserved winners to all of you. So my first question is possibly a very generic question. How do you as a designer, right, what tools or design consciousness is needed for us designers to kind of get to the threshold of innovation and invention? Anyone? Perhaps Yengi, would you like to begin?
Well, that's almost a question that's always asked from the students. Well, I always answer that there are two main factors to start with. One is the external factor. You have to look at the site. You look at the condition of the surrounding. Then there is the internal factor, which is the brief. Be it a house, be it a HQ, be it a hotel, the client will have special needs. Then the third factor is up to you. How you interpret, how you understand, perhaps the cultural side of things. A design that is resolved by us will be different from someone else because of the personality, because of the experiences. I think that's good to start with, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is a layer on. I mean, I totally agree with what Kini said. Just to get a bit of perspective. So my training was in Netherlands, in Eindhoven, and it's Dutch style. And what that means is utterly honest. So we were a master's class of 30 and we graduated in 15, right? And at every stage you ask us, so what does design mean to you? Are you sure you want to be a designer? Are you sure? Like if not, then leave. And many people left, right? So I think that is something that is a conviction, right? It's a conviction to what we do. We can do tons of stuff in life. So why do design? Why do architecture? Why do whatever you're doing, right? So I think during that master's course, we were confronted with that. And I think, in the works that we've done, you can see that we truly own what we are doing, or we really want to find that super nice, it spends a lot of time, to find a super niche, relationships or specs of projects to really apply your talents and your passions to something that you believe in, at the same time would impact people, right? Because sometimes you can get over ego and then like, oh no. So actually there's a lot of relinquishment of ego as well. I think when you truly want to impact in projects. So conviction, I think I would say is a huge part of it.
Right. Joshua, would you like to say something?
I mean, I think personally from our case, I'll just speak to the experience of the Hat Care project. For us, I think it really had to do with looking back again at the person of the user and starting to really give up certain assumptions we had about who that person was. I think like many people who go to design school, there's this idea that you always carry of the typical user, right? And the idea of inclusive design or accessible design is a kind of favor we do to people who are disabled, right? We make special accommodations for people who are not able-bodied or whatever. And it was really renouncing that idea, I think, that got us to a place of actual kind of innovation in this particular project, was of getting to rethink who our user was, their daily experience, how they just experience simple spaces, simple kind of architectural configurations, simple kind of visual configurations, language, color, these kinds of aspects, and to see them anew in order to then have to design them again, have to design them to a different user who is not a kind of fictional or mythical typical user. And what we found very compelling about that is when we would show people some of the designs that we tweaked, they say, oh, that might be useful because, you know, I'm a normal person, but I have a lot of trouble with this, or I get visually confused when there are too many colors in my environment, or I can't stand big changes in light or kind of harsh silhouettes. And we realized that actually a lot of room still exists when we think very carefully about the user and about how they actually experience space, as opposed to a kind of shorthand that we often use, you know, for who they are and how we should design for them.
Would you like to say something? Yeah, I got to take the mic from you. I think it's a very important question, and I think the common thread of what people are saying so far, I really agree with that. You have to ask the big questions in the beginning to think more about outcomes necessarily than the constraints. And one thing we always try to ask ourselves is, why does architecture have to look like architecture? Because sometimes if you take the different ingredients and understand how they need to perform individually, it allows you to think about how they can come together in a way that is unexpected, that has never been seen before. And I think I was actually sitting there watching the presentations, very, very inspired by the all of the content around hack care, and I think especially the kind of hacking of elements so that they have a performative function, but they don't necessarily look like something that was designed in a way that it was to meet accessibility requirements. And I think it's that kind of thinking about, you know, why shouldn't everyone have access to the same level of design, to the same experience that can lead you down a different path of getting there. So it's not about aesthetics, but it's really about understanding kind of, you know, about in this case, you know, equity of access, equity of experience to different people.
The important question is also about how then do you push it so that it has your personality, it has that additional factor that you think it is needed in the design. And sometimes you have authorities, you have clients, and all these problems that crop up and just dishearten you. It makes you, you know, just fed up with things and just want to throw away your rotring tools and AutoCAD. What do you think as designers we need, whether or not it's more particularly the software that we need in ourselves, so that we are a bit more resilient, and how do you tackle these problems? I'm sure building Capital Spring, you have tons of authorities requirements that needed to be resolved, right, for FSSD and all that. How do you have that level-headedness that you can plow through them properly and come up with a fantastic product at the end of the day?
It's funny, I gave a talk last week at SUTD, and the first question at the end was, how do you deal with clients? And it was kind of like this question of, it wasn't maybe that outright, but how do you deal with people who crush your dreams when you're a young architect starting out? And I think what we've found is that it's so important for architects to be proactive and engaging with things and not being reactive to constraints that are imposed on you. And I think Capital Spring is a great case in point where it was a design competition that we did. What we submitted in the design competition looked quite different in very many ways from what resulted in the end. And if you look at the area called the Green Oasis in the middle, I think is a great example of that, where we won the competition, we were working on it with the client, we brought it to the URA. The first thing they said is, those plants are all going to die. I am not going to allow you to build this unless you can prove to me that you can do something that is legitimately green. We don't want to just put plants in a sky terrace. It's not greenwashing. And that set about a whole process for us where we really had to understand what plants need to survive. What is the spectrum of light they needed to survive? What does that mean in terms of the design of the space? And it's really the result of taking all of those constraints in a very positive way and imagining how that could create something new for us. So there is you know, architecture design is inherently a labor of love that is about deeply embedded optimism in the world being able to be a better place. And I think that really needs to be a core value that is held on to tightly.
Maybe I'll answer both questions. Okay, I think I'm brought to mind, reminded of a very unique project that I was quite privileged to do. If you've seen in the earlier CV, was the Mandai Crematorium. I think this is actually a building. Yes, we have the context, we have the brief, but I think one thing that we had to put ourselves into is into the emotions that the next of kin will experience when you go through the funerary process. Much alike, I think, similarly for all buildings, as designers, we need to really indulge ourselves into the emotions, the feelings, what the occupants go through, what do we desire to help them with. I think as designers, we can help them one step, 2 steps. I think we have done our job well. And I think that's where I'm reminded it's a difficult project. Even, and it's question number 2, the clients didn't know how to understand the nature of the project. So together with them, we literally had to experience this whole journey. It may just take 45 minutes through that whole process, but from one space to the other was indeed a very different experience. From the parting of your loved one to watching of the loved one being pushed into the cremators, it's a very, very tough moment. So we had to literally debate. We literally had debates among ourselves with the clients to try to understand, and we brought in external parties to try to give a holistic view. What exactly do the next of kin go through during this very, very tough moment? So that in a sense, in my personal experience, has helped me to take myself to a different level from project to project, to try to immerse one into the understanding of the nature of the project, the emotions, the feelings. And then as a designer, as a creator, what can we do to help elevate the situation by just 1 step or 2 steps better? And it will mean a lot to them. It will mean a lot to the occupants of the building. So this is something that I just wanted to share. It's a memory of the past, but I thought it's very cool. Yeah.
Xing, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo a bit what Brian was saying about designers. I mean, talking about architects, but I think anybody who is a creative is really an eternal optimist, believing in the power of design to do things that the lack of design would not be able to accomplish. But also, in addition to that, is really having something to say. I mean, I found it quite funny. Kenny came in and said he loves being back here because we all want to talk about stuff. We all have things to say. And I would say that's really the key. I mean, obviously, the magic of design is something else, right? There's a bit of alchemy, there's a bit of science, a bit of art, a bit of magic. Of course, there are methods to designing, but there's always a little bit of magic, right? But the key thing before that is first just seeing things precisely. So I think all of us, and design school teaches you this, is to identify something in the world that doesn't sit right. Like there's something that isn't quite right, whether it's just with a site, whether it's a problem of accessibility or whatever at any scale. And then to be able to very accurately describe why you think that's a problem with that, and to kind of describe that and share that with other people. And then once that vision is very clear, it gives you the kind of resilience, at least as something to fall back on, a really core belief to fall back on that helps you despite all of that, clients throwing changes at you.
In that same line of thought, do you think that design needs to come from a need or a problem? Must design always be about problem solving? Can it be something else above and beyond that?
I think opportunity. It doesn't have to be a problem, but it's something, it's a place where you can change something for the better, right? So it can be a small problem, it can be a massive problem, or it could just be a place for opportunity, something to change for the better.
I think a friend, who is the design curator at M+ Museum in Hong Kong, Shirley, maybe some of you know her, she said that design is a modulator of reality. Right, design modulates reality, right, and how the design that we have reflects the beliefs of the day, the technologies of the day. so on and so forth, right? So to answer your question, it's really like, do we need more chairs? Do we need more buildings, right? Of course we do, because there are new problems, new contexts, new framings, new demands of society, new sustainability issues, right? So I think by default there will be these things that bubble up, and people who find it, oh, I find this interesting, let's go for that, you know. But maybe I want to just rewind back a bit about the like how to handle clients, right? I think that's always a very relevant project, because creators just want to keep giving. It's by our nature to give, or budget like that, huh? Okay, I'll still give lah. And that's bad, right? And that's bad because we just so brimming with stuff, with just so much to give, right? So it's I think it's just to do such concise and remarkable work that you attract the clients that you want, right? And to say no. No is powerful, and to like who deserves to work with me? Who deserves my work, right? And then therefore, then there's a budget for it. So because budget is also a commitment to what we're trying to achieve together, right? So it's that self-respect and like demanding of that, And how do you do remarkable work is by, I always believe that if you want to do excellent design, you must be an excellent person. And how do you become an excellent person? Expose yourself, always be kind, be open, know your food, know your drinks, know your wine, know your culture. What is $2 worth here? What's $2 worth there? What's 2,000? Oh, that's nice. What's 20 cents? You can, as I said before, you can find beauty in all levels. I mean, it's like, wow, you can paint with all the code or reality that you want, and it doesn't this to be architecture or design, because it's just complicated problems and everyone needs to come together. Yeah.
Can I turn the table around a bit? We always talk about we as designer and how we solve problems, but actually we spend 1 year, 2 years, 3 years on a project, but the client actually live in the project for the following 10, 15, 20 years. More and more, as a designer, I enjoy much more not seeing my design being built, but actually seeing my design being enjoyed by the clients, the user. Like for instance, Gallup, every time when we went to Gallup, you see a group of people enjoying the lawn, sitting there, picnicking, or people taking photos, wedding photos. Whether you approve of their dresses doesn't matter, but they really having a good time. So I think these days I listen more to clients and really find out what deep down inside they want. And these days I hope my architecture can be less or more understated and less obvious and less to your face, because it got to blend into the environment. It got to share with other buildings next to it. So you are not that important actually, You are just contributing one bit in that environment. This is how I see it now. Having said that, I think I've been lucky. I don't know. The authorities, the government agency, they have been kind to me. I mean, I listen to them as well, and when we kind of like have a problem, like for instance, you need to resolve the universal design issue for an old building like Gallup. You cannot just smack a disabled lift next to a 120-year-old building. So by conversing, what are the possibilities and all that, using a ramp, which is part of the landscape element anyway, came about and matches it very well. So the solution sometimes, you'd be surprised, it actually comes from the authority,
Exactly. Yeah.
So I won't see them as confrontational.
Yeah.
I see them as someone also wanting our environment to be better.
I
I totally agree with that statement because sometimes the regulations that we have, we as architects, right, we have tendencies to just read them face value without understanding why they are there. And once we take that level to fully understand where the guidelines are coming from, and then if you think that the guidelines need to be changed, have that discourse and try to, weave your way throughout around it so that design need not be stifled by a certain guideline. And in fact, there's some authority guidelines that the authorities listen to, I must say. I mean, programs like Lush, right? And because of Lush, you see beautiful rooftop terraces in Capital Spring and even in the state courts, right? And what else do you think can be done by organizations, by authorities to support these people-centric efforts in our work? Anyone? No?
What else can be done?
Yes. Oh,
I think like what Kenny said, that to seek to understand, I think it's important as we bring forth a purpose in what we are doing, whether it's a statutory board, whether it's the authorities, I think we're all together as one. Today, there's no individual who can say that I can just do it all by myself. It's a collaborative effort, large team. So I think what is needed is a very strong purpose. And I think together with the authorities as well, of course, we appeal that the authorities together will try to seek to understand first why we are doing what we are doing. And if it does need to deviate slightly, I think this is where there has to be a room for understanding, room for adjustment. I'm not saying one side or the other, both sides. And I think that's where we have seen before how the authorities also have come to work alongside the architects in overcoming certain obstacles and certain compliances, but in order to achieve a greater vision, a greater purpose. So we have seen that. I think this is the spirit that we want to encourage going forward in the future, that I think as a nation, we want to work together for a greater purpose, all of us together.
Actually, I was just I was handed the mic because there was great confidence I could contribute something to this conversation. But I do have to say that since we started working in Singapore about 8 years ago now, I think there has really been a focus on more performative outcomes rather than prescriptive. And I think that's something that's very important because at the end of the day, it's about setting in focus a vision and how you achieve that, and the process or the journey in which you get there doesn't necessarily need to be over prescribed. And I think that kind of openness to being more process oriented is something that I've noticed in the last 8 years or so.
okay.
And which I think is something that is very important to design. I mean, but I would also say that constraints in a way are the mother of invention, and I think the worst projects we work on are the ones where people, clients, authorities tell us it's an open field, do whatever you want. You need something to respond to. You need something to contribute. You need in a way a problem to solve. And I think the word elevate was used earlier in a way that kind of allows architecture to elevate the experience of the community, to contribute something positive.
Right. So in that respect, right, are there any instances where the design elements of Capital Spring could not be executed because of a certain guidelines or certain constraints that you have? Or otherwise, it would be even more fantastic, for example, right? Are there any instances that you faced in the project?
I think we attempted to convince the client that they should in turn attempt to convince the URA to allow us more height so that it could be the tallest building in Singapore. but that's a little bit facetious. I really don't think so, because I think there was a very well defined sense of what could be done on the site when we came in, and what we attempted to do in a way was simply to be midwives almost to the coming into existence of something, taking these different ingredients and trying to combine them in a way that allowed us to create something new. I think if anything, if I go back to the example of the green oasis in the middle, the kind of constraints imposed by the authorities, their expectations, for example, allowed us to create new processes to design something that we would not have done on our own. And I think that's where I go back to this idea that I think as architects it's important to be positive and proactive and to take these things and imagine how it could allow you to create something new and unseen, rather than as something that necessarily kills your dreams.
Right. I think I don't think it needs to be the tallest building in the world to stand out. I think the building is as elegant as it is today. Okay, I'm going to take questions from Slido. Very interesting questions by the audience today. Right. How do you know when to stop, as architects or designers for that matter? We enjoy refining. How do you manage timelines, particularly in the context of relatively short design phases? Anyone? Tough question.
It's a straightforward question when the man hours and budget runs out, right? I mean that's the practical question, right? But always know that in your heart of hearts that this could go further if we had a bit more time, a bit more budget, if they could capture what we're trying to say. But is that the answer you're looking for?
I don't know. Whoever's asking this question, anonymous.
It's a real problem.
It is,
right? Knowing when to stop. But I think it's something where you have a different perspective on it. I think 15, 20 years after practice and experience is something that matters a lot.
It's interesting because we're speaking from a different time scale, right? I'm speaking from like months time scale. You guys are speaking from a year's time scale, right? Because I'll get industrial design and we do things like windows for Hermes and every season, kind of thing. So I always put in my email if I guess we can't do it this time, maybe next time we have more budget we can do it. And okay. And then sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. Yeah.
I actually quite like time limit because I think designer tends to over-design. And one of the important factor or things that I would teach my student is that don't put in too many ideas in one design and learn to edit. It's very much like writing, So to have a time limit is actually quite good. Second thing is that I won't dwell on a design 24 hours. I will go swimming. I will go and watch a film. But then it goes back to, you remember Alexander language, sleeping on it. That means allow your brain to, the subconscious to actually do the design. Then when you put aside the design, you already thought through everything, but you go and do something else. The answer will emerge somehow. And when you catch it, and that's it, that is the one. And not, constantly questioning yourself. So time limit can work sometimes.
So take a walk, go swimming, do what you like, and come back to the drawing board.
Or jogging, yeah.
And jogging, yeah. And timesheets, guys. I think when your bosses ask you to fill out their timesheets, please do so religiously so that we know. Right.
Shing and I actually used to play a game where we'd go to an architecture project and we'd try and spot the moment in the design when the designers should have gone home to bed. Oh. It's almost every project you can look and say, that's when they should have just put their pencil down and went to see their wife or their kids,
Right, and I hope you didn't pass one of my projects. Okay, now, next question. I guess this is more pertaining to head care. For head care, do you have any stories of people who have been impacted by the publication locally or globally?
Not personally, yes. It's very interesting that a lot of friends, even that I thought I knew well, I didn't know that they had a family member with dementia. But after it came out, like it just opened all of these conversations, and they said, I need that book. So yes, I mean, in that respect. But in terms of the hacks actually helping people, that's something that when it came out in 2020, Lian Foundation really tracked. They had a few kind of live hackathons. They had callers, viewers kind of call in and talk about how this, how the publication impacted them. The kinds of things that they did, whether it was helpful, what they would have changed, etc. And they actually had some, these Instagram influencers like go to different places and kind of work through hacks with them. So that was really, really amazing to us. Yeah, and I mean, I always tell this, I hope maybe nobody in the audience has read the interview in the PDA book, because something I mentioned there, but we love how the book, yes, it's meant for people with dementia, but it's really a kind of call for a certain flexibility of thinking, of kind of constantly hacking / designing their way in life through issues, right? That you can use that kind of design thinking to kind of take yourself through certain issues. And one of the people who kind of wrote into Lian Foundation to ask for the book was somebody who ran a home for dogs with mobility issues. And he really, he said this book is really going to help him to think how to change that environment for those dogs. So, I mean, it's a completely different problem. But again, like it gave us a feeling that it was about, it was successful in communicating a way of thinking and approach. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're gonna come up with a heck care for dogs or animals or something?
Yes.
Huge market, pets.
Pets, it's a huge market.
Huge market, yes.
Now, what's also interesting that I caught from your talk, Hadwai, was how your team decided to think globally and hence write on this very famous brand of furniture. And that's one thing I find that's, as a designer, sometimes we tend to internalize and just think locally. That aspect of thinking beyond regional and globally is something that maybe local designers need to have. How do you think, as a fraternity of designers, we can bring that Singapore brand at a global to the global stage?
Wow, that sounds like some ambassador thing.
So
let me tell you,
ambassadors.
Yeah. So I think like it's the age-old question, right? What's Singapore design? What's Singapore brand, right? And I think that is not as relevant as impactful design. So how we see it is like, because in this infocom-scape these days where everyone's attention is spliced to the nanometers, right? Like, how do you spread an idea, right? It's like Inception, right? Like the idea is the thing, right? If someone has an idea and like it goes on to become good things or bad things, like will affect millions of people. So I think it's about how you give exposure to your ideas, right? So it's not so much about the format anymore, not so much about archetype anymore, right? So we use IKEA because it's a well-known brand, right? We use hacking because it gives agency back to the people, right? And I mean, for my practice at least, we made sure that the photography was as important as the product itself, because the photography is going to travel more than the actual chair that we designed, or So when we like it would appear in like magazines around the world, people we expose, oh, what's that about? And then they start to ask, and they go down their own rabbit holes and try to find it. So we had to make sure that our content is Instagrammable, TikTokable, so and so forth, while not cheapening anything, but in respect of that, this is the information infrastructure that we can exploit. Yeah.
I think also we are luckily in a moment now with a certain level of globalization of culture where it's not just, say, Asian nations that are forced to accept kind of Western culture as a kind of neutral influence. I think nowadays with the kind of the mania for Korean culture, the kind of globalization of Japanese culture, in a way, when we were doing this book, we always felt that it was something that could be full of Singaporean identifiers, but still work globally. At this point, we didn't feel like we needed to really compromise anything. I think even the title, the pun in the title, is not going to make any sense to an American. It doesn't matter. If they stick with it, they'll figure it out. If they read enough about it, they'll figure it out. We used for the layouts were typically HDB floor plates, because we felt that, if we needed to start with anything as a kind of a neutral, kind of most impactful condition to work with, we should start at home. But the idea then is that, hopefully there's enough in the project, enough in the, say, the sadly kind of global sharing of the dementia care experience and its difficulties and its daily struggles, that hopefully it would still kind of resonate, just due to the nature of the kind of problems we were trying to address, and then the medium we were using to address it.
Okay.
I find the idea of exporting Singapore designers scary, because wherever we go to, you have seen the number of kinokunias we have done, and then we even venture into sort of like rare territory of Turkey. I tell you, they have much more profound kind of like culture or the way of living that we have to learn from. And so the identity of a Singaporean architect or Singapore architect is very much secondary to me, because I then will see or learn from them. Unfortunately, Turkish language is so difficult, not like Italian or Japanese, that we can somehow comprehend one or two sentences. But it's at the same time fascinating. So perhaps it's the other way around, I like to say. You as a Singaporean, you go out, please, you learn the way of life they already established over hundreds of years. The piece of land there that has been, sort of like going through so many centuries. China is the same, Taiwan is the same, Japan is the same. So I think we then learn from them, and then to sort of like take part of them, become part of us when we are designing. And so we accumulate all these experiences. Perhaps when we bring home, you'll be our identity. It's the other way around. Just like the Sultan Hotel, you look at the facade, it's got a bit of Malay, a bit of Western classical order, a bit of Chinese motif. So Singaporean, I'm so glad that we are still young culturally. So we are not uptight in imposing what we have. So perhaps that is my approach.
Well, there's a saying that goes that culture should never be territorial. In fact, it should be something that is shared with one another. And I guess that it's all about going to a place, honoring and respecting the place, and then interpreting with your own design senses, I suppose.
I suppose there's a change, and we hardly talk about design movement today. Like international style, when we were students, we were taught that is the kind of like international style. But these days, who cares? You don't drop an international style building to a remote town in Turkey or China, because they don't need that. In fact, there have been samples of repeating formula, if you like, commercial buildings. And what is the outcome? They become very sad because it couldn't merge with the local culture.
You want to say something?
Yeah, I think there is one thing for me where I think Singapore and the kind of experience here is a very important relevance outside of Singapore globally, and that's in the area especially of climate resiliency, because I think Singapore has over the decades learned how to deal with issues of torrential rain, of flooding, of very high temperatures in a way that other parts of the world are just coming to grips with. If you go to Europe this summer, temperatures 35, 40 degrees are not unheard of, even, today, right now. Issues of flooding and changing climate. And I think there's a certain kind of pragmatic attitude in how the urbanism and solutions are developed in Singapore that is very, to me, as someone living in Copenhagen and has been there for a long time now, is very uniquely Singaporean, where I think there is an avenue to be plugged into a very global conversation about what the future of climate resiliency, of infrastructure, of urbanism looks like.
It's okay. I suppose at this moment I will just open the discussion to the floor, an audience maybe. Yeah. CK. Yeah.
Thank you to URA and all the speakers. I have a question relating to some of the projects relating, that has an old building in its context. So you have the Market Street car park, which was historic, and of course the whole site was torn down and rebuilt. But you also have the state courts with a new build right next to it, and of course this is not new, right? You have if you go down Orchard Road, you can see Tan Chin Tuan building with a mansion, and then suddenly you have this very tall building going up. You have, sadly, Cathay Cinema, Frank Brewer, which was sort of taken down, and then this horrible building that went up. So I'd like to ask Colin this question, because I think, and the answer should actually really be given by both Colin and URA, because, as a typology, right, what is the relationship and how do we relate to these buildings? Do we just do a sort of a gesture by just making a connection to it? And, what are the things that we need to do? Because I'm also not seeing this in Singapore. I'm seeing this in Penang. I'm seeing that, in a lot of the conservation projects where you need to build more, the solution always is to give the developers or the client more land, and then you can build a tall building up. I think this process needs to be thought through and moderated. And also, I think, what do you do with the old building? Because even in his presentation, Colin calls it the Octagon, when nobody calls it the Octagon, right? So even the name is subverted in the process. We don't call it the old state courts or anything. So I think this is something that is worth doing. And to go back to claims, there's a very interesting story about the old state courts, which is that the PW team that's proposed the scheme for it was rejected by E.W. Bakar because it was like 8 stories, and he didn't want that to be there. And so he called upon his friend from Cambridge, Victor Chu from Kumpulan Architects, to have this, what Colin calls the octagon, right, on the site. So there is a very strange claim for it to be the tallest building when the old building actually wanted it to be merging together with the landscape.
Right.
So I do think this is something that I want to throw out, because increasingly I think we have to deal with the old buildings, but we also have to deal with them sensibly, and making just gestures about the old courts can be seen and and all that. I think it's just form, right? And it's not helping us very much. Thanks.
Thank you. So is that meant to be a comment or? Right. Okay. Do you want to respond to that comment?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Colin? Yeah.
Maybe I'll give as a broad generic on conservation. Again, okay, maybe from my experience. So I think in one, as we approach, yes, there's going to be more and more buildings that we're going to keep, we're going to preserve. And as an approach, I think conservation, we know that we need to fully understand the nature of the original building. What is the spirit of the building? What is the history of the building, the meaning of the old building? And see how we can extrapolate from there. And as we develop the new, I think we cannot deny that it will be the new. And the new, likely going forward, is going to be much more massive. And that's where we have to pull certain threads across, and how we can understand the old and see whether the new can correspond with the old in perhaps a poetic manner, in a sensitive manner, a respectful manner, So again, pulling it back to okay, I'll just use the word octagon for ease. The geometry of the octagon is very, very strong. It's a very prominent building. In fact, it is a very interesting building. I think as we study the building interiors, it's really a very unique piece of work. But when we do something next to it, worse, we have a monument even next to it, then the question comes, how do you treat, how do we detail, what is the initial massing in the form of the new tower that's going to take place? So I think in the state courts, this is where, as we keep looking at over and over and again, I think the towers, in a way, is an appropriate choice in its form, in its details. It's not that it's secondary by all means, but I think it's sensitive, that it is respectful, and it forms I call the word backdrop, backdrop, because it doesn't stand out to compete with the monument. It doesn't stand to compete with the octagon. If it had done that, I think it would be in chaos. Three buildings would be in chaos. So I think that's where the design has very sensitively, in a very controlled manner, in a very ordered manner, detailed the form, the octagonal form, of the building, and therefore counterbalances the two buildings that's very, very strong and domineering. So that in the whole collective whole, the three can stand together as one in a very sensitive, poetic manner. Yeah, so I think that's where we have done it for state courts.
Thank you, Colin. We don't have any more time for the questions, so I would like to end by asking each and every one of our panel award winners, perhaps in one or two sentences, what advice can you give to our young designers to inspire them? Maybe Brian, would you like to start?
I think I would just go back to what I was saying earlier, that it's very important to be proactive and optimistic about the constraints and the conditions that you're given to work with, because ultimately it's a labor of love and optimism and faith in the future.
Shing?
Don't take everything so seriously. I'm still trying to do that, but that's the advice I give myself.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned specifically from this project is just kind of the power of empathy as part of the architect school toolkit, just to really try to, we all like to impose our kind of design concept on something. I think sometimes to kind of hold that back for a little while longer and think a little bit more about who is going to be there, how they're going to experience it, and what ultimately the encounter with that work of design will mean to them.
Manoj?
Yeah, so I'm 43 now, right? So I'm just thinking like, what's happiness, right? And this job at where I am still continue to give me happiness, right? So I've done my research, right? So happiness are two things, right? When you're at deathbed, you need to remember two things. One is the life experiences you had, oh my grandkids, so cute. And then the other one are the quality of your relationships. So therefore, how does everything that I do in my life, including work, support quality of relationships? I'm not signing up for shitty relationships. I only want to work with good people and full stop. Yeah.
I think be courageous and be persistent and enjoy the process, and don't give up as a designer. I think not until the building or the architecture is realized, 9 out of 10 people don't know what you're talking about. Thank you.
Well, in closing, I saw the title for this forum, People at Heart, and I think that's something that resonates very well with me and my encouragement to young designers. At the end of the day, practicing is very highly complex today, all the more. But let's not forget that the purpose in what we do is for the people at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's my takeaway and advice.
Well said. Well, a big congratulations to all our award winners. Thank you. Keep inspiring, and we look forward to bigger things from all of you. And thank you, Yori, for having me, and thank you for the session.
Thanks for the sharing today. We have reached the end of part 1 of the President's Design Award 2023 Recipients Forum. I would like to request for the audience to stay and take a group photo. I would also like to invite our speakers to take their seats with the audience.